Hey guys, what's going on? So today I'm talking a little bit about the upline relationship, right? So there's kind of this thing where we don't really want to listen to our upline at first, right? Unless you're really like committed from the get-go. But basically you have to understand that they're wiser than you are, right? But wisdom is just experience, okay? So you can be exactly like your upline. You can have the exact wisdom that they have in the business, but you have to do what they say, right? Because they're trying to tell you what they've done and what's worked for them, right? So if you don't listen to them, you're kind of an idiot, right? Because you're still trying to find your own path and you're not really taking advantage of what the business has to offer, which is basically someone who's successful showing you how to be successful at what you want to be successful at. So why would you not listen to them, right? So wisdom is basically just experience, right? And experience is just events over time, right? Uh, and then you can apply the knowledge that you've learned through those events, and that's wisdom, right? So you can pass that down to your downline, who passes it down to their downline, and so on, right? And that is exactly how the business is built, right? So it's built through passing on wisdom and learning through the events that happen, right? But you have to be willing to give everything a go, right? And you have to do what your upline tells you to, right? Because everyone is unique, right? Everyone's unique, but in the business, certain events and certain things that happen in our lives, they overlap, right? They've happened to your upline, and if they haven't happened to your upline, they've happened to someone that your upline knows, and that person has got through it, right? So you can as well, but you have to be willing to take that counsel from your upline, right? Um, the other thing I'll talk about is everyone thinks that money is our greatest asset, right? But it's not true. There's health, which like if you're a billionaire and you're unhealthy, there's no point being a billionaire, right? Because you can't enjoy the money, right? And then time. Time is our other greatest asset, and time is our greatest asset because we can create memories in it, right? And at the end of your life, when you're about to die or whatever, and you're looking back, uh, you'll kind of reflect on what you did and what you didn't do, right? And if you had time, there's a lot less stuff that you didn't do, right? So there's a lot less regrets because I think it was some like journal. They asked people that were dying what they regret, and I think 95% of the regrets were things that they didn't do, right? So if they had the time to do that and the inclination, then they would have less regrets, right? And that's exactly what you get out of the business if you work it properly, right? So time is the greatest asset because it creates memories, right? Memories with your family, memories with your kids growing up, right? That most people don't get to see because they're out working a 9 to 5 or whatever, right? The other thing I'm going to talk about is like mindset, right? So obviously I've talked about how important mindset and attitude is when you're building the business, but I'm going to talk specifically about like the difference in income, right? So broke is a temporary situation, right? Broke just means you don't have much money at the moment, right? But poor is a mindset. Poor people make decisions not thinking about the long term, basically, right? They're looking for that instant gratification rather than allowing themselves to feel some displeasure in the moment for a greater reward later on, which is delayed gratification, right? And so the poor people often use an anesthetic. So this could be like TV, this can be drugs, right? Because, and you can definitely understand why, because they don't really have a greater purpose, because they can only see in the short term, right? But when people have that purpose, it removes the need for any anesthetic. Because why would you want to like numb your existence when you know where you're going and you know what you're doing, right? So the business can be that for you if you're caught up in that kind of that poor mindset, right? Um, the difference between a dream and a fantasy is basically a dream is you know how you're going to get there, right? You have a vehicle and you have a method of getting to your dream. But a fantasy is like it's a pipe dream, right? It's like oh, I want to be Bill Gates tomorrow, right? It's just not possible and there's no reasonable avenue for you to get there, right? So when you are dream building and when you are goal setting, you need to come up with reasonable avenues on how to get there. Otherwise, they'll just remain fantasies and they'll just remain pipe dreams, right? And that's all they'll ever be, and they'll never come to fruition because you didn't lay out a game plan, right? And that's what your upline is there for, right? Your upline is there to help you write out your dreams, write out your goals, and then work on a game plan to get there, okay? They're not just there to give you advice on building the business, they're there to give you advice on life, right? And I think it's an amazing opportunity that the business presents, right? They're not just your mentor in the business, they're your mentor in life, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about building the business, right? So whenever you do like a phone invite, like through the call to a plan, never try and explain it, right? Never try and explain it through the phone, because you just can't, right? Because you're trying to get them to commit to something that's emotional based on like a phone call, which you can't really transmit emotions, and you can't really transfer the dream through a phone call, right? So you should just never try it, really, right? Because you'll be on the phone for like 2 hours and they'll just be even more skeptical than when you first called, right? So you want to get them to the meeting without really having to go into like hours and hours of depth of what you are like going to show them, basically, right? And when you are prospecting, when you're contacting, the only qualification is that your prospects are looking for something, right? And they might not even know that they're looking, right? Because people come in and out of the looking zone, and they just know that they need more money. They don't know that they're looking for an opportunity to make more money, right? And the one like prerequisite I found for people that are looking is that they have some level of dissatisfaction with their life, with their job, and where they can see themselves going, right? So I always tell this story about my downline, who I think he was a plumber, and he went to work every day, and he could see like he was new at the job, and he could see the other plumbers that have been doing it for like 10 years, 20 years. And he realized that they were doing exactly the same thing he was. They were just 10 and 20 years older, right? And it kind of grew this dissatisfaction in him, right? Because he realized that's exactly where he was headed if he didn't make a change. And so when I talked to him, he was already having these thoughts, right? And he already had that base level of dissatisfaction. So when I talked to him, he didn't even realize he was looking for something, but he jumped on it because he was, right? And it's all about finding that person that's some level of dissatisfied with what they have in life. And if you can get people to tell you that before you tell them you've got an opportunity, it makes it all the easier to basically get them to sit down to a plan, right? One of the last things I'll talk about is practice, right? So perfect practice makes permanent, okay? So basically that means when you're practicing, probably with your upline, maybe cross-lining, with your upline's like permission or whatever. When you're practicing, you want to be practicing at a very high standard, right? Because that's going to make your performance basically a lot better, right? And it's going to make it permanent, right? So when you're practicing, there's this quote I've always liked. If you're going to try wing it without practicing, you're going to have winging it results, right? So that basically means you can't not practice, then go out into the field and try and perform, and then be shocked that you're not getting good results, right? Because you haven't practiced, you haven't put in the hours that no one sees to perform where everyone can see you, right? And that's kind of like, you just got to practice with your upline, with your downline, whoever, right? You got to run through the motions so that you know what to say. Everything's a reflex. You're not having to think about it and react, right? And basically, when you are contacting and when you're prospecting, you're not like trying to sell people, right? Everyone gets hung up on this thing that we're trying to sell people into the business. We're not. We're sorting the people that are looking for an opportunity from the people that are not looking for the opportunity, right? We're basically scouts. And whether or not the player is fit for the team is up to the player. It's not up to us, right? So we have to take it as kind of an emotionless job, okay? The last thing I'll talk about is like the victim mindset, right? And that kind of comes back to the poor mindset, right? So you can either have reasons or you can have excuses, right? You can either let your obstacles, your excuses, stop you from even trying, or you can have reasons to like look back and be like, I did that because that obstacle rose. You know what I mean? So the business it teaches us how to be solution oriented rather than whine and moan about how our life turned out, right? And that, I think that's the single greatest aspect of the business, is it teaches us to look for solutions, to not give up and to keep going. And that is the single most important thing in the business. Never quit and keep going. That's all. Have a good day, guys.